Hi everybody, this is the Football Hut, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the people's champion, your host, the Hut, and this is another visit to the insane asylum known as WFAN.
They're coming to take me away, ha-ha, they're coming to take me away, ho-ho, hee-hee, ha-ha, to the funny fun.
Well, welcome back to the Football Hut, and hopefully you like this video and hit that subscribe button. Now in this video we're going to talk about Carl Banks. It's almost like the prodigal son returning to the airways that has nothing to do with the New York Giants broadcast. And it is very funny to me. A lot of people watched my videos on Carl Banks and all this stuff that happened 2 years ago. And I want to do an update. This is a major update when it comes to Carl Banks and WFAN. Now, we go back 2 years, and I'm going to read you an article, and we'll get into this. And I found other stuff. More like fights that the Giants' legendary defensive player Carl Banks has had with the personalities of WFAN. So this is a war that's gone on for a while. But, get into the but at the end. Giants legend Carl Banks resigns from weekly spot on WFAN. Now this is from 2 years ago, nearly. New York Giants legend Carl Banks has resigned from his role on WFAN's midday show after clashing with Brandon Tierney and Sal Licata last week, also known as the Spaz and the Coconut Head. Brandon Tierney being the Coconut Head, Sal Licata being the Spaz. The standoff arose from after the co-host heavily criticized Giants linebacker Kayvon Thibodeau, slamming him for anything from his motor to the way his body looks to how he dresses. This is the kind of insanity that they've talked about there on that program for 2 years. Or attacking New York Mets right fielder, saying that he doesn't look like he's 26 years old, he looks like he's older, or stuff like that. Or talking about, or trying to run out Mets first baseman Pete Alonso out of town. This is the stuff they've been doing for the last 2 years. Quote, "He stinks, dude. There's nothing about his game that jumps out to me," Spaz said. "His body looks awkward and he's not fast." Banks called into the show the following day, which was his usual spot, and he's been doing this. He was doing that for 20 years. And Banks is a very positive guy. He's a winning player. When he played on some of the legendary teams of the NFL. 1986 team, Giants team's a legendary team. The conversation became increasingly heated before Licata finally instructed his producers to hang up on Banks. "I can't take it anymore. Pull him down, seriously. We have to have a voice here, and I appreciate the time call. Thank you." And you would think that he was calling in. It was the most bizarre back and forth that Spaz and Carl Banks had. It was a stunning moment in New York sports talk radio history, and it did not go without consequences. Although WFAN attempted to smooth things over with Banks, he ultimately felt too disrespected to return and terminated his role. Now, Gary Myers put out this tweet. Breaking news, and he's a friend, and he worked at Daily News, New York Daily News. "Carl Banks told me he has resigned from his weekly Wednesday spot on WFAN. Banks was completely disrespected last week by hosts and fans Brandon Tierney and Sal Licata of the BT and Sal show when they hung up on him after conversation about Kayvon Thibodeau. During their Wednesday show, Licata and Tierney addressed Banks' resignation. Quote, "Usually in this spot we have Carl Banks on. Last week we had a testy debate with Carl. Right on the air afterwards, I came on and apologized for the way that it ended. Kind of cutting the call short there after 20 minutes. He shouldn't have hung up on him. That's the problem," Licata said, via the New York Post. Also called him during the week and also apologized. He said all was good, but Carl just doesn't want to do the spot anymore, so we move on. "Yeah, we move on," Tierney said. Tierney says he spoke to Banks on Tuesday and they had a great talk, but ultimately the two-time Super Bowl champion would not be returning to the show. Now, go back to Gary Myers. Gary Myers put this out, and he was very critical of the Spaz and the Coconut. And for some reason, Greg Giannotti, the nut job in the morning, as part of the Norman and Gregory show, had a spat. He said some very nasty things to Gary Myers, and this kind of escalated to where Giannotti went after Carl Banks, saying that his spots, his segments in the morning show, in the mid-morning show, was boring radio. And not only did he go after him, but Norman Esiason, a.k.a. Boomer Esiason, went after him too. He told him and said on the air that Carl should be a man, should man up, which was ridiculous. Because, Carl's whole attitude is you can't always be negative when you talk about your fandom. You have to be positive. You can't be negative all the time. You got to be positive in everything you do. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. This is what I fight with them about, is their negativity. Well, this didn't go over well because WFAN lives off the negativity, need that. They cannot sustain things if it's positive. They can't deal with it. That's not something that they're good at. Now, I came across this article. This happened, now keep this in mind, this happened in late October of 2023, early November 2023. Well, they're still fighting. Greg Giannotti and Carl Banks are still going back and forth. They're still going back and forth. This is from Barrett Media. Greg Giannotti: I don't respect media opinions from Carl Banks. He spent years on this radio station putting people to sleep. Again, this is from 3 months ago. Greg Giannotti lit off a firestorm of reaction following his opinion on Monday about New York Knicks center Karl Anthony Towns calling him a loser. The WFAN co-host on Norman and Greg went off about how he feels Towns' losing mentality leads to people having an opinion of him as a soft and losing basketball player. What could be considered as a typical rant following a playoff exit, former WFAN host Carl Banks took to the social media to retort to the posted clip by WFAN. In response, Banks remarked how he felt the opinion of Giannotti was pathetic and they should try to be a better human instead of broadcasting this ignorant shit. Shortly after, Giannotti responded to Banks' comments of his own on social media last night, saying Banks still owes him $500 for his appearance he did in 2010. I don't know what the hell. Furthermore, the WFAN morning host continued his retort of Banks' comments on Tuesday morning. Quote, I wasn't making it personal about Karl Anthony Towns. He assumed I did. But then he made it personal about me, said Gregory. The same thing Carl Banks feels about us being talk show hosts who didn't play. How you guys can't evaluate sports because you didn't play is the way I feel about Carl Banks when he starts chiming in on stuff like this. Leave this stuff up to us. This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. Banks never criticized anybody for not playing. Where Gregory is coming up with this is he makes up stuff. Gregory likes to pretend that he's in the brains of people. Banks, a former WFN contributor, resigned from the station in November 23 following a heated argument with WFN's midday show with Brandon Tierney and Sal Cotton. Now, keep in mind, he resigned from the show. He didn't resign from the radio station. He still works for the radio station. Moreover, Gregory continued, the way you don't respect our opinions on sports, I don't respect your opinions on media because he's not very good at it, said Gregory. He doesn't understand. His comprehension was terrible yesterday. He spent years on this radio station putting people to sleep. Importantly, Giannotti insisted his comments were not directed at Towns personally, so they were more about his style and approach to the game of basketball. He did acknowledge that some took his comments at face value instead of looking into the full context. He's basically agreeing with them. Basically saying Banks was right. Quote, it's like a chess checker situation here. I don't know what he means. Noted Giannotti. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to give opinions that you react to. Here's when we stink. When no one's talking about us. When no one's paying attention to us. When the things that come out of your mouth don't end up in the newspaper. That's when WFN stinks. So everybody thinks that this was a WFN gone down the drain moment. No, this is WFN. We're still here. You still care. You still pay attention. You pay attention more than you want to. So go screw. He's very bitter. He's a very bitter guy. It's a very bitter situation. So one thing about Gregory I find interesting is that he's very bitter. I don't know why. Maybe he's worried he's going to get replaced by somebody. I don't know, say Craig Carton? This was from a few months ago, so who knows. Now I bring this up because Carl Banks was on WFAN on Friday. Unbelievable. On on one of the programs. Since he has zero relationship on the air with Brandon Tierney and Spaz Licata, and he has a terrible relationship with Greg, Norman and Greg. But he does have a good relationship with Evan and Tiki, and he went on the air and gave them a preview of folks, the Giants 2025 season. And I did not know about this, folks, until WFAN posted this video on YouTube. And I was hoping that they would have brought it up. They didn't bring it up. Any of the spats going back and forth between Giannotti and Banks and what happened in the mid-morning show. Let me just play a couple of seconds of this clip. This is to start the interview. I thought this was funny. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, you hear him calling the games with Bob Papa, the great Carl Banks. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm feeling all right. How are you feeling? Are you excited for another season? Oh, we got to pump Carl up.
No, pump me down.
Oh, hold you down. I'm sorry.
I am. I think it's
Again, they don't want to talk about the elephant in the room. You think they want to, considering this would bring them ratings. But maybe out of respect for him, he doesn't want to deal with it. That's fine. And not everybody has to scream. Not everybody has to yell. Not everybody has to be a fool, which is most of what WFAN does most of the time. A guy like Carl Banks is not a fool. He's not. And that's what bothers them. They don't like serious people. They like to make fun of people that they think they can make fun of. Say, like Frank Fleming, have him come on. He makes a fool out of himself like he does every day. I think there's something a little weird about him. Don't you think, Frank Fleming? I think he might be a little half-side of a fruit salad, as Imus used to say. You never see him with any women. It's weird. But anyway. And this is another episode of the Insane Asylum known as WFAN. Subscribe to the Football Hut.
They're coming to take me away, ha ha. They're coming to take me away, ho ho, hee hee, ha ha. To the funny fun.